All right, let's take a look at that data that we have for you again on the Kenya-US trade balance. And you're going to see, well, that it has been what it has been. I mean, the talking point is that, well, they have it. Which therefore begs this question, Kim, as we talk about this conversation. We do know the importance that, well, the trade deal with Washington bears for Kenya, but it's not really geared towards correcting our trade balance, Tim, is it?
I don't think we should ever expect anyone to do anything for us. I think that would be a big mistake.
Yes.
And so what we really should do is look at that trade deal and say, how can we maximize opportunity? How can we export more crops? How can we do more meat exports? How can we do more high value agriculture, whether it's avocados if it was possible, or vanilla, or whatever that trade deal allows us to do. Because in the end, America will be looking out for its own people.
Yes.
Always looking out to do to make sure that their farmers get jobs, and their farmers can only get jobs if they actually have market in Africa. So they are looking also at Kenya as a market. So I really think we just need to be a little bit more strategic. We really should not lose this decade that the way we've lost it to the Chinese, in the sense that our diplomacy has to be, it cannot just be that we receive money and we get excited. It has to be that when we receive money, we also look and say, we only have 45 or 50 million Kenyans. How can we use this trade deal to give as many young people jobs? How can we increase income per capita? And that requires strategy, that requires trade, that requires very good negotiation, not just political negotiation, but trade, tariffs, not just, I mean, one of the biggest hindrances in exporting to the US is non-tariff barriers. It's just the standards that are required for our exports to meet, especially anything that is edible.
Yes.
But then that is where the opportunity really lies. And so we shouldn't hope if our foreign affairs are not being strategic about what we can gain as a country, looking at the areas that we can be more competitive, we shouldn't hope that that trade deal will help Kenya, as it were. Especially now when we desperately need money. If someone gives you $1 billion, you get excited. But you know, they could be giving you $1 billion, but they are taking 20, 30 billion, and that is true for Africa. We are actually a net exporter of our wealth.
Pretty much. All right, Robert, let me bring you in on that as well. I mean, as a data scientist, Robert, when you look at where our trade balance with the US has been, somebody's going to ask you, what will take long? I mean, if you look at where we are, but up to 2025, when we do have the AGOA deal sort of expiring, the only thing that is in between here is that we're going to be able to export to the US without these tariffs. And there are a lot of other areas that it's touching on. But do you think, Robert, that at the end of the day that this is going to correct our trade balance with the US? Yes, Robert, could you?
I don't think,
yes.
Yeah, I don't think it is going to do that immediately. Like I said, what we need is a mind shift.
Yes.
Which is very important because things are changing and we have very young and vibrant youth. So, for example, Bangladesh, they have over 4 million youth who are working remotely in other countries.
Yes.
So that is the low-hanging fruit that we have. And of course, we know we are very good in agriculture. So what we need to do is just value addition and try to commercialize it and move away from like what we say subsistence farming. We need to move into agribusiness because agriculture actually contributes about 30% to 35% of our GDP. But if you look at the national budget in terms of the allocation, it is way off. And even the lending from commercial institutions to agricultural sector. So that sector needs a lot of support, technical support in line with the changing dynamics. Because we know that like 98% of agricultural activities in Kenya, they are rain-fed.
Yes.
Yet the other patterns are changing. So what are we doing to work within that framework? And some of the solutions that we have, I've seen several organizations doing very well in that space, but where they're missing out is that in a season that there's a shortfall of rain, their solutions fail. So we need to look at solutions that work from first principles. If weather is the problem, let's start from there. Others will be making a lot of effort, but the productivity will be very low. So it simply means that the US are more productive than us. So
Yes.
we need to work towards being more productive, being more innovative and creative. Then that way, we'll find more resources being channeled to areas where we can gain more opportunities to export more to the US.
Pretty much. Now, let's cross over to the last issue that we're going to discuss this morning on Economic Review. And I want to usher in Beatrice for the very first time this morning. Now, the government's affordable housing project is set to receive a boost of at least 8 billion shillings from the UK to fund the construction of affordable housing. Now, UK Foreign Secretary Dominic Raab said Wednesday that the funding is set to arrive in tranches and will come in as part of UK's government support of President Uhuru Kenyatta's Big Four agenda and affordable housing. Now, 1 billion of the amount will come from the UK-funded Infraco and another 7 billion from private investors, both coming in as part of the UK government's investment on infrastructure in Africa. Now, Mr. Raab stated, and I quote, the 8 billion, that is around 53 million US, that's about 53 million pounds, will be including 1 billion, that's about 7 million pounds from the UK funded Infraco, and 7 billion, that's about 46 million pounds from private investment. Fine. Now, this morning, let's look at exactly the way in which the banking industry has been approaching the real estate sector in the country in terms of funding. And if you look at the bank's credit to the real estate industry or sector in Kenya, you'll actually see exactly where we are. Yes, they will say rising, but at the same time, minimal, because if you go back to the way that we have been performing in this sector all the way from 2018 to date, it's been gloom and doom in that area as well. Good. Let me bring in Beatrice this morning. And Beatrice, your question is going to be, what would this investment mean for the affordable housing units for the Jubilee government? And I want you to start from painting for us a picture on what we need to make of the affordable housing projects for Uhuru Kenyatta's government.
Thank you for having me, Simba. So to start with, the Affordable Housing Initiative was a big or a major pillar of the Jubilee government, especially in the second term.
Yes.
And the idea, or the aim, was to build around 1 million housing units by 2022. So far, as you can see, we have had several projects. Very little has been done to deliver those projects, but a number of them are still under. We have very limited time to 2022. So probably the target of getting to 500,000 units is not really going to work.
Yes.
But there's going to be progress that has been made. And looking at why there's been delay in the delivery of these projects, mainly has been the unavailability of affordable financing. If you look at what real estate developers depend on at the moment, they mainly depend on the banks for financing for their projects. It's a very expensive mode of financing, so they've been need to look for other ways of financing just to make sure they are able to make profit margins.
Yes.
Now, looking at affordable housing, the profit margins for a developer are very slim. So then with the provision of this financing through the government, then it's going to make it easier for them to deliver projects.
Yes.
However, if you look at the timelines we have and the target of number of houses, maybe we definitely won't get there.
All right, Beatrice, we've been waiting for you to tell us this, so let's get on it as well. I mean, what we say that the Jubilee government has only one proper budget cycle to address all their promises to the Kenyans. Is it not possible, therefore, Beatrice, for us to say, well, I mean, don't talk about affordable housing if you can actually not get it? Because, Beatrice, we do know that each year we do have a deficit of housing in this country that grows by 2.5 million each year. So when you're telling us 500,000 is exactly what is going to start to solve that, is it not okay for us to say, well, that one was a total failure?
So to start with, I think the intention was good.
Yes.
Yeah, the intention was good.
Yes.
But it's taken a bit of time to put structures in place to ensure that these projects actually get moving.
Yes.
Because even if you look at projects that have been launched, very few of them are actually ongoing. And the real estate sector has been very badly hit by the COVID-19. So we've seen private developers, most of them shying away, especially from affordable housing. If maybe we had fast-tracked the projects, fast-tracked these reforms, yeah, just to make sure the private sector is more involved, or the environment is made better for them,
yes.
maybe we would have gotten closer to the targets. But as it is now, then it seems a bit too late to still talk about 500,000 units. It's a much needed demand. It's a much needed supply, especially with the housing deficit of around 2 million.
Yes.
Initially, it's been growing annually. So we're not even able to get to a first target to start with. So it's only gotten worse.
Beatrice, I'm going to come back to you so you can tell us exactly what are the chances of the real estate sector as we start 2021, because we do know things have not been good since 2018. Let me bring in a team at this time. Team, talk to me. The Affordable Housing Project by President Uhuru Kenyatta's government. I mean, what does it make you feel when you hear that? Let me begin from there.
Actually, when the 500,000 house target was set,
yes.
I estimated that we needed to be building 1 3-bedroom every minute.
Yes.
For us to actually achieve that number. So of course you can already tell that unless that number was supposed to be aspirational, it's impossible. And now to achieve that number, we need to be doing maybe 2 every minute. It's virtually impossible. So, but then I like the idea that they wanted it to be somewhat aspirational, big audacious goal, but it failed. Let's just be honest about that. I think it failed. There is some good progress that has happened, and I think some of those challenges might not necessarily be the ministry's challenges. Some
yes.
of the challenges revolve around lack of land that is actually readily available and serviceable. The other one is the off-tech financing that Beatrice sort of alluded to.
Yes.
I think the KMRC, Kenya Mortgage Refinance Company, is now beginning to be operationalized. That's a very good thing, and the minister is doing a good job at that. The pension fund, for the first time, can now invest money in affordable housing. That's a very good thing. So even though the housing levy failed, we now see more funding going into real estate. And so this is welcome. I mean, the 8 billion Kenya shillings from UK is welcome. I estimate that it will likely create, 4,000, 5,000 jobs for at least the next 2 or 3 years. That's a good thing. I just hope that we don't end up sending all that money to China. I hope that we can actually use local content bill so that as many of those jobs can actually remain in Kenya, because that's the other tragedy is that we get funding from abroad, but we ship all the money to China because we keep giving all the contracts to Chinese. I think we really need to work on capacity of Kenyan contractors to absorb capital, and there are very good companies that can do reasonable projects so that as many of those jobs, as many of that 8 billion can remain in Kenya.
Yes. All right. Now, Robert, it's back to you now. I mean, look at that data that we have now, 500,000. It is, I would say, one proper budget cycle for the Jubilee government to deliver on this promise. From what you said this morning, can the government deliver on this? And if they're going to do that, what needs to change?
I think, as Tim has said, it might not be achievable within these few months to 2022,
yes,
or even up to the end of 2022. So it was a good goal that they had. And just to look at the history of housing problems that we've had, we've been trying different strategies. So they're more of experiments, if you ask me. So that's the right word. Because even the slum upgrade projects, they fail. The reason they fail is because of what we call gentrification, whereby you build and upgrade an area, but you've not upgraded the lifestyle of the people living there. So they are pushed out, and people from outside that area come to live in that area. So you've seen that, so that didn't work. So when we use the word affordable, again, it is not the right word. because I have data with me here that the data says that if you are going to live to buy a 3 million house without even the bank interest rate, you need at least 25,000 Kenya shillings in terms of loan installments if you are going to pay it in 10 years.
Yes.
So if you are supposed to pay 25,000 per month for a house, you need at least 100,000 in terms of salary. So how many people are earning that? So let's just look for a way of covering the deficit. So covering the deficit, it means that we have to give people a lot of concession, and it won't be affordable because people cannot afford these houses. So we need to look for ways of just building houses for people.
Yes.
Whatever it can work, because affordability means that you can actually pay. Who can afford to pay a monthly installment of 25,000 in Kenya? If you look at official data, less than 100,000 people in Kenya and above 100,000 Kenya shillings.
Yes.
So 500,000 houses. So already you see the math is not adding up. So it's not data driven, but like Beatrice said, the intention is good and we welcome it. Because from there, we'll see where we went wrong and make the necessary improvement. So another brief history that I want us to look at some of the problems that real estate is having. In the year 2010, there's an act of parliament that was passed, which increased the quota of lending in real estate sector up to banks produce up to 40% of their loan book to lend to real estate developers and the sectors, real estate and construction. So from my point of view, that is the time that we started seeing a lot of growth in the sector. So in 2010, the average mortgage size was 4.1 million. In 2011, it went to 5.6. Then 2012, 6.4. So it went up and up until 2016, when the average mortgage size was 9.1 million. So I think after that, there was a glut, and it went down to 8.52 in 2017. Then in 2018, it went down to 8.48. So you can see there was a lot of funding or liquidity at a certain point in time in Kenya. So that could have created some elements of mismatch in certain segments of the real estate sector. So I believe there's a bit of correction, and the affordability problem is there. We just need to find, or we need to agree on what demand is. Demand and deficit are two different things. Because a homeless person, that's a deficit, but can they afford even a house worth 1,000 Kenya shillings per month? So we need to be real, like data driven, and that will really help all of us.
Yeah.
Pretty much. Yes. Beatrice, let me bring you in on that as well. And I'm going to point out to your site on investment report on the chances of the economy in 2021 now. And in that, there's a very specific aspect that you pointed out to, that land was going to be among those areas that were going to contribute to the growth of the economy this year as well. But Beatrice, can you sort of elucidate what you meant by that? And if it's possible, can you give us the chances of the real estate sector in 2021, Beatrice?
So to start with, from our analysis, the outlook for the real estate sector is neutral.
Yes.
Because if you look at what happened in 2020 and what we're going through now, nothing has changed as much.
Yes.
We're expecting the economy to get back on track, but that has not happened. It's going to take a bit of time. And until the economy is back on track, then all these sectors continue to be affected. We had a key challenge with reduced disposable income last year, given the pandemic, people losing jobs, and that affected transaction volumes in real estate. That has barely changed this year. Businesses are still struggling. People who lost their jobs, most of those have not recovered yet. So the challenge continues. So for the real estate sector, the outlook is neutral. If the economy is back on track, then the sector will also get back on track in line.
Yes.
But it's going to take time. So probably in the medium to long term. If you look at the land sector, last year and the prices we had and this year, you'll notice that there was an increase for land in satellite towns. These are areas we're looking at outside the Nairobi CBD to start with. This is where land is available in bulk and it's affordable. At this point, with reduced disposable income, individuals are looking for affordable options, either affordable housing options or affordable land to even build on. So that's why we had an increase in asking prices in such areas. But if you're keen to look at the suburbs, we're looking at areas close to Nairobi, the high-end market. The land prices actually have been going down. They either stagnated or went down. And this is because then they're too pricey for people to afford them. Housing in those areas is also very high.
Yes.
The cost of housing, that is. So there's less demand in those areas. So land in satellite towns has been resilient because there's demand for land there since it's affordable. You're looking at the options people have. And for this year as well, we expect it to continue growing, not at a very high rate. If you look at the rates right now, we're talking about a 1.7% increase in asking land prices compared to other years where we've talked about 2 to 3%. So it's not a very high increase, but it's going to be there. But mainly in satellite towns, not everywhere.
Pretty much, Beatrice, team, and Robert. Thank you very much for taking your time this morning to talk to Metropole Television's Business. You have been quite invaluable this morning.
Thank you for having us.
All right.
Thank you.
And on that note, we come to the end of Business. Thank you very much for being part and parcel of it this week. We'll see you Monday for another edition. Good morning.